Hello and welcome. Picture yourself standing in the grandest city of Faerûn, where marble towers pierce the clouds, and the harbor gleams with ships from 1,000 distant shores. You walk the cobblestone streets of Waterdeep, the City of Splendors, surrounded by merchants hawking exotic wares, adventurers seeking glory, and nobles draped in silks worth more than most kingdoms. But as you navigate these bustling thoroughfares, you might ask yourself a question that countless visitors have pondered. Who truly rules this magnificent metropolis? The answer, you will discover, is hidden behind masks of magic and mystery. The true masters of Waterdeep do not sit upon gilded thrones in public view. They do not parade through the streets demanding adoration. Instead, they gather in secret, their faces concealed, their identities known to almost no one. They are the Masked Lords of Waterdeep, and their story is one of the most fascinating tales of power, wisdom, and sacrifice in all the Forgotten Realms. You might wonder how such a system came to exist. Why would the rulers of the greatest city in Faerûn choose to hide their faces? To understand this, you must journey backward through time, to an era when Waterdeep was still finding its identity, still struggling to become the beacon of civilization it would eventually represent. You must return to the early 11th century by Dale reckoning, to an age when warlords ruled through might rather than wisdom, when the settlement by the deep harbor was plagued by violence and threatened by monsters. The transformation from brutal warlord rule to enlightened governance came through the vision of a man whose wisdom would shape the destiny of millions. His name was Ahghairon, and he was no ordinary wizard. Ahghairon first emerged into Waterdeep's history in 957 by Dale reckoning, when he became special advisor to the warlord who controlled the settlement. His magic proved decisive in defeating the trolls that threatened the growing community. And under his guidance, the first fortifications of what would become Castle Waterdeep were constructed. The wizard watched as wealth and success transformed the warlords from defenders into tyrants. One such ruler was Rawler, who dreamed of creating an empire of the North with himself as its absolute monarch and Waterdeep as his capital. In 1032, by Dale reckoning, Rawler raised an army to conquer all who opposed his imperial ambitions. Ahghairon defied him publicly, and the enraged warlord attacked the wizard with his sword. But Ahghairon's magic transformed Rawler's blade into a serpent that turned upon its wielder, biting and killing the would-be emperor. In that moment, Ahghairon could have claimed absolute power for himself. He was the most powerful individual in Waterdeep, and none could challenge his authority. But the wizard understood something profound about power, that it corrupts most thoroughly when it is most visible, most celebrated, and most coveted. Instead of crowning himself king or emperor, Ahghairon proclaimed himself the first lord of Waterdeep and decreed that he would rule as an equal with masked lords of unknown identity, gathered from Waterdehavians of all walks of life. This decision, made in 1032 by Dale reckoning, established a system that would endure for centuries and prove itself one of the most successful forms of governance in all of Faerûn. The concept was revolutionary rather than concentrating power in a single visible ruler or a small aristocratic elite. Ahghairon proposed distributing authority among a council whose members would remain secret, hidden behind magical disguises that concealed not only their faces, but also their true names from all forms of divination and detection. The wisdom behind this system reflected Ahghairon's centuries of observation, though the exact length of his life before assuming power remains uncertain. His actions suggest he had witnessed the fall of kingdoms, where nobles schemed for thrones, where the ambitious poisoned their rivals, where the wealthy bought influence as easily as they bought bread. He had seen cities torn apart by feuding lords, each demanding loyalty, each convinced of their divine right to rule. And he knew that Waterdeep, this jewel by the sea, this crossroads of trade and culture, deserved better. The solution, he understood, was not to find incorruptible individuals, though he sought the wise and the just. The solution was to create a system where corruption became nearly impossible. These masked lords would meet in secret, debate in private, and vote according to their conscience, rather than the demands of family, guild, or faction. They would represent every stratum of society, nobles and commoners, merchants and laborers, warriors and scholars, humans and other races. No single group could dominate the council, because no one would know which mask concealed which interest. A noble arguing for aristocratic privilege might find their position opposed by another noble wearing a different mask. A guild master might unknowingly vote alongside their greatest competitor. The system would force the lords to consider the good of the entire city rather than the narrow interests of their own class or profession. But Ahghairon knew that secrecy alone was not enough. The masked lords needed more than simple disguises. They needed magic powerful enough to defeat the most sophisticated divination spells, clever enough to foil the most determined investigators, and enduring enough to last through the centuries. Thus, he crafted the Lord's Helm, artifacts of remarkable sophistication. These were not mere masks or helmets. They were magical constructs that completely transformed the wearer, altering their voice, their stature, their very presence. When a lord donned the helm, they became someone else entirely, someone impossible to identify through mundane or magical means. Scrying failed. Truth spells revealed nothing. Even direct confrontation yielded no clues, for the helm made each lord appear identical to every other, a figure of authority without individual characteristics. The creation of these helms required magic of the highest order. We can imagine that Ahghairon poured years of research into their development, consulting ancient texts, experimenting with enchantments, and testing prototype after prototype. He understood that the helms needed to be more than just disguises. They needed to represent something greater than the individuals who wore them. Each helm became a symbol of Waterdeep itself, a reminder that the lords served not themselves, but the city and its people. When a lord wore the helm, they set aside their personal identity, their family connections, their guild affiliations, and their individual ambitions. They became, in that moment, pure representatives of Waterdeep's collective will. The selection of the first Masked Lords was undoubtedly a delicate undertaking. Ahghairon could not simply choose his friends or allies, for that would recreate the very nepotism he sought to eliminate. He needed individuals who demonstrated wisdom, integrity, and dedication to the common good. More importantly, he needed people willing to accept a burden that brought no public glory, no visible reward, and tremendous personal risk. For the Masked Lords, if their identities were discovered, would face constant pressure, threats, and potential assassination. They would need to live double lives, attending council meetings in secret while maintaining their normal public personas. They would need to keep their involvement hidden even from their closest family members and friends. The sacrifice was immense, and yet Ahghairon found people willing to make it. Among the First Lords, we can reasonably infer, were individuals whose names have been deliberately lost to history, which is precisely as they would have wished. The historical record tells us only that Ahghairon gathered his council from Waterdeepians of all walks of life, suggesting the diversity that would become the system's hallmark. Based on this founding principle, the council likely included representatives from across Waterdeep society, perhaps a dockworker who understood the concerns of common laborers, a merchant who knew the complexities of trade, a noble who recognized that true nobility meant service rather than privilege, a priest who saw governance as a sacred duty, and a former warrior who had defended the city and gained perspective on its needs. Each would have brought unique insights to the council. Each would have added depth to the deliberations, and each would have worn the helm with pride, knowing that their anonymity served a greater purpose than any personal recognition could achieve. The early meetings of the Masked Lords established traditions that would endure for centuries. They gathered in secret locations throughout the city, places protected by magic and guarded by trusted servants who knew only that they served Waterdeep, not which specific individuals they protected. The lords developed protocols for debate, systems for voting, and methods for implementing their decisions through the open lord, who served as their public representative. They learned to set aside their personal biases when they donned the helm, to listen to arguments they might otherwise dismiss, and to consider perspectives they might normally ignore. The helm became not just a disguise, but a transformative tool, changing not only how others saw them, but how they saw themselves. Ahghairon's genius lay in understanding that power exercised in secret, power divorced from personal glory and advancement, could be far more just than power exercised in the public eye. The Masked Lords could make unpopular decisions without fearing mob retaliation. They could oppose powerful interests without worrying about personal consequences. They could prioritize long-term prosperity over short-term political gains, and because their identities remained hidden, they could walk among the people they governed, hearing unfiltered opinions, observing real conditions, and understanding genuine needs. A masked lord might be the baker you bought bread from that morning, the guard who nodded as you passed through the city gate, or the scholar sitting beside you in a tavern. This connection to everyday life kept the lords grounded in reality rather than isolated in privilege. The system faced skepticism initially. Many former supporters of the warlords objected to governance by unknown individuals. Some citizens feared rule by anonymous tyrants, but Ahghairon addressed these concerns by maintaining his role as open lord, serving as the visible representative of the council, and taking responsibility for their decisions. He explained that the masked lords existed not to escape accountability, but to ensure that accountability flowed to the city rather than to narrow interests. Any citizen could petition the open lord, who would bring concerns to the council. The system proved its worth through effective governance, as Ahghairon brought order to Waterdeep, founding the City Guard and City Watch, and establishing the administrative structures that would allow the city to flourish. For 200 years, Ahghairon ruled alongside the masked lords, his magical longevity allowing him to guide the city through centuries of growth and change. The city grew spectacularly during his tenure. The city wards were formally established in 1035 by Dale Reckoning, organizing Waterdeep's expanding territory into manageable districts. By 1248 by Dale Reckoning, the city had grown prosperous enough to establish formal guilds controlling various trades and crafts. The walls expanded multiple times to encompass the ever-growing population. Ahghairon became a beloved figure, celebrated not for personal power, but for creating a system that transcended any individual. In 1256, by Dale Reckoning, Ahghairon's longevity magic finally failed, and he died. His passing marked the end of an era, but not the end of his vision. The masked lord system he created would face its greatest tests in the years following his death, but it would endure, proving that his wisdom could outlast even a wizard who had ruled for 2 centuries. The lords Helm themselves became objects of fascination and speculation. Citizens whispered about their appearance, their powers, and the identities of those who wore them. Bards composed songs about the mysterious lords who sacrificed their identities for Waterdeep's good. Children played games pretending to be masked lords, debating city policy. The helms transformed from practical tools into powerful symbols, representing the idea that true leadership meant serving something greater than yourself. Now, as you stand in Waterdeep streets, you look around with new understanding. The prosperity surrounding you, the order, the justice, the flourishing culture, all of this stems from a system established nearly 500 years ago by a wizard who refused the crown and chose, instead, to rule alongside anonymous equals. The masked lords walk among you, hidden in plain sight, carrying the weight of their secret responsibility. They might be anyone, they might be everyone. And that uncertainty, that mystery, is precisely what makes them so powerful and so essential to everything Waterdeep represents. Section 2. The architecture of anonymous rule. The government of Waterdeep operates through a structure unlike any other in Faerûn, a carefully balanced system where power flows through channels, both visible and invisible. At the heart of this system sits a council whose composition has evolved over the centuries to meet the city's changing needs. While historical records indicate that 16 lords became traditional during certain periods, the exact number has adjusted based on circumstances, reflecting Waterdeep's growth from a frontier settlement into a sprawling metropolis. These lords gather in secret, their deliberations hidden from public view, their votes cast without outside pressure or interference. But to understand how this council functions, you must first grasp the unique division of responsibility between those who rule in shadow and the one who stands in the light. The Open Lord occupies a position of singular importance within Waterdeep's governance. This individual serves as the only lord whose identity is publicly known, the face that citizens see when they think of their city's leadership. The Open Lord bears multiple titles, each reflecting a different aspect of their vast responsibilities. They are simultaneously the Warden of Waterdeep, charged with the city's overall protection and welfare. They serve as overmaster of the guilds, mediating disputes between the powerful merchant organizations and ensuring fair trade practices. They command the watch, overseeing the city guard and maintaining public order. And they act as the city's chief diplomat, representing Waterdeep in negotiations with other powers throughout Faerûn. These responsibilities would overwhelm most individuals, but the Open Lord does not carry them alone. They speak for the council, implementing decisions made collectively by all the lords. While the Masked Lords are considered equal to the Open Lord in authority when it comes to legislation and policy decisions, certain executive powers are reserved exclusively for the Open Lord. Chief among these is the responsibility for vetting potential new lords. When a vacancy occurs on the council, whether through death, retirement, or removal, the Open Lord must identify suitable candidates. This process requires extraordinary discretion. The Open Lord cannot simply announce that they are seeking a new council member, for such an announcement would invite manipulation and corruption. Instead, they must observe the city, noting individuals who demonstrate wisdom, integrity, and dedication to Waterdeep's prosperity. They must investigate potential candidates without revealing the true purpose of their interest, and they must approach selected individuals privately, extending an invitation that comes with neither glory nor public recognition, only the burden of secret service. The Open Lord also possesses the sole authority to name their successor. This power ensures continuity of leadership, while preventing the chaos that might erupt if the council had to publicly debate who should serve as the next public face of Waterdeep. When an open lord dies, retires, or steps down, they designate the individual who will take their place. This designated successor might be one of the existing Masked Lords, who would then remove their helm and step into the light. Or they might be someone from outside the council entirely, chosen for their particular skills and qualities. The transition happens smoothly, without the power struggles that plague other cities when leadership changes hands. Additionally, the Open Lord holds the unique right to demand the private unmasking of any person suspected of being a Masked Lord. This power serves as a crucial safeguard. If someone begins acting in ways that suggest they might be abusing their position as a Masked Lord, if corruption or betrayal seems possible, the Open Lord can require that individual to reveal themselves privately. The Open Lord can then determine whether that person should continue serving or whether they must be removed from the council. This authority prevents the system from becoming a shield for wrongdoing, while still maintaining the essential secrecy that protects the lords from outside pressure. The Masked Lords themselves meet according to carefully established protocols. They do not gather daily, for such frequent assemblies would make their secret meetings too conspicuous. Based on what we understand of Waterdeep's governance, they likely convene when important matters require council attention. Proposed new laws, major expenditures, responses to threats, appointments to key city positions, and judgments on high crimes. The lords would receive notice of meetings through secure channels, messages delivered in ways that cannot be traced or intercepted. Each lord would come to the gathering place separately, arriving at different times through different routes, ensuring that no pattern emerges that observers might detect. When the lords appear in public, which happens rarely and only for the most serious matters, such as deliberating on high crimes or responding to petitions from lower courts, tradition dictates that only 4 lords attend, and one of these 4 is always the Open Lord. This limited public appearance serves multiple purposes. It prevents the full council from being vulnerable to attack at a single gathering. It maintains an air of mystery about the exact number and composition of the lords, and it ensures that the Open Lord, as the public face of the council, is present to answer questions and explain decisions. These 4 lords, draped in their black, formless robes, present an imposing sight. They sit in judgment without showing emotion, without revealing any hint of the individual personalities beneath the helms, becoming pure embodiments of Waterdeep's law and authority. The Lord's helm itself remains one of the most sophisticated magical artifacts in Waterdeep's possession. Each helm completely obscures the wearer's identity through multiple layers of enchantment. The most obvious effect is physical concealment. The helm transforms the wearer's appearance, making every Masked Lord look identical. Height, build, and other physical characteristics become uniform. The robes that accompany the helm further disguise body shape and movement. But the helm's magic extends far beyond mere visual illusion. It alters the wearer's voice, giving each lord the same neutral tone, the same measured cadence. Even the most distinctive voice, whether melodious or harsh, deep or high, becomes indistinguishable when filtered through the helm's enchantments. More impressively, the helm defeats all forms of magical detection and divination. Scrying spells directed at a masked lord show nothing useful. Truth detection, magic fails to penetrate the helm's protections. Mind-reading attempts encounter insurmountable barriers. Even the most powerful divination rituals, those that might reveal a person's past actions or future intentions, yield only confusion when directed at someone wearing the helm. The artifact essentially creates a zone of magical anonymity around the wearer, preventing any supernatural means of identification. This protection remains absolute. Centuries of attempts by curious wizards, ambitious nobles, and foreign spies have failed to breach the helm's defenses. The helm also protects masked lords from each other. When the council meets, no lord knows the identity of any other lord. They may have suspicions, of course. They may notice that certain perspectives align with particular professions or social classes, but they cannot know with certainty who sits beside them in council. This mutual anonymity serves a crucial purpose. It prevents the formation of factions within the council based on personal relationships or shared interests. A noble cannot secretly approach another noble on the council to coordinate votes favoring aristocratic privilege, because they do not know which other lords are nobles. A guild master cannot conspire with fellow guild masters, because the helms keep their identities hidden even from potential allies. The selection of new masked lords follows a process designed to maintain the council's diversity and wisdom. The open lord seeks individuals who represent different aspects of Waterdeep society. Historical practice suggests that at any given time, the council typically includes several nobles, bringing their understanding of high politics and international relations. Several guild masters or prominent merchants serve, contributing their knowledge of trade, commerce, and economic policy. Representatives from the common folk provide perspectives on the concerns of ordinary citizens, those who work the docks, staff the taverns, guard the walls, and build the city's infrastructure. Scholars and priests offer philosophical and moral guidance. Former adventurers bring experience from beyond Waterdeep's walls, understanding of threats the city might face, and connections throughout Faerûn. Once the open lord identifies a suitable candidate, they must approach that individual with extraordinary care, based on accounts from those familiar with the system. The invitation to join the masked lords comes privately, often in a secure location where the conversation cannot be overheard or observed. The open lord explains the responsibilities, the sacrifices, and the absolute necessity of secrecy. They make clear that serving as a masked lord brings no public recognition, no official compensation, and significant personal risk. The candidate must maintain their normal life, continuing their regular occupation and social activities, while secretly attending council meetings and participating in governance. They must lie to friends and family about their whereabouts when the council convenes. They must pretend ignorance when others speculate about the masked lords' identities. They must watch their own city implement policies they helped create, while accepting no credit for wise decisions and no blame for unpopular ones. Many individuals, when presented with this invitation, decline. The burden proves too heavy, the sacrifice too great, or the risk too frightening. But those who accept, those who agree to don the helm and join the council, demonstrate the highest form of civic virtue. They choose service over recognition, duty over glory, and Waterdeep's welfare over personal advancement. These are the individuals who become masked lords, and their anonymous dedication sustains the city's prosperity. The voting procedures within the council balance democratic principles with practical efficiency. For routine matters, a simple majority of those present suffices to pass measures into law. The lords debate the issue, present arguments for and against, and then vote. The helm ensures that each vote is cast according to the individual lord's conscience, rather than external pressure. For more significant matters, particularly those involving major expenditures, declarations of war, or fundamental changes to city law, a higher threshold may be required. The exact voting requirements for different categories of decisions have evolved over the centuries, adjusted by the council itself to reflect changing circumstances and lessons learned from past experiences. The meeting locations themselves rotate to prevent anyone from predicting where the lords will gather. Waterdeep contains numerous secure chambers scattered throughout the city, each protected by magical wards and physical guards. Some of these chambers exist in public buildings, hidden behind secret doors and illusions. Others occupy private locations, known only to the lords themselves. The Palace of Waterdeep, the Open Lord's official residence, contains several such chambers, but the lords do not meet there exclusively. This could imply that they might gather in a chamber beneath a temple, in a fortified room above a warehouse, or in a magically concealed space that exists partially out of phase with normal reality. This variation in location provides security against attack and prevents observers from staking out a single location in hopes of identifying arriving lords. The guards who protect these meeting places represent another layer of security. These individuals know only that they serve Waterdeep, not which specific people they protect. They might guard a door without knowing what lies beyond it. They might patrol a corridor without understanding the significance of the room at its end. Their loyalty is to the city itself rather than to any individual lord. And this loyalty is tested rigorously before they receive their assignments. Many of these guards are members of the City Watch who have demonstrated exceptional dedication and discretion. Others might be retired adventurers, former members of elite military units, or individuals personally vouched for by the Open Lord. The communication systems that allow the lords to coordinate without revealing their identities represent yet another marvel of magical and mundane ingenuity. Messages reach individual lords through secure channels that vary by recipient. A lord might receive a coded message hidden within an innocuous-looking business letter. Another might find instructions written in magical ink that appears only when the parchment is exposed to a specific enchantment. A third might be contacted through an intermediary who knows only that they must deliver a sealed message to a particular location at a particular time. These varied communication methods prevent patterns from emerging that might allow clever observers to identify lords based on message delivery routes. The Council also maintains records of its deliberations and decisions, but these records are encoded and secured with the same care given to the lords' identities. A complete history of council votes and debates exists, allowing future lords to learn from past decisions and understand the reasoning behind long-standing policies. However, these records never name individual lords. They note only that certain arguments were raised, certain perspectives considered, and certain votes cast. Specific lords remain anonymous even in the historical record, their contributions attributed only to the Council as a collective body. Throughout Waterdeep's history, this governmental structure has proven remarkably resilient and effective. While other cities suffer coups, civil wars, and succession crises, Waterdeep maintains stable governance. The system survives because it distributes power widely enough that no single individual or faction can dominate, yet concentrates authority clearly enough that decisions can be made efficiently. The Open Lord provides visible leadership and accountability. The Masked Lords provide wisdom, diverse perspectives, and checks against potential abuse of power. Together, they create a government that serves all of Waterdeep rather than narrow interests, and their architectural balance of shadow and light has become the foundation upon which the City of Splendors stands. Section 3. Guardians from every walk. You stand in the marketplace as dawn breaks over Waterdeep, watching merchants arrange their wares. Fishmongers call out their catches, and bakers display fresh bread still steaming in the cool morning air. The vendor selling apples might be counting coins and calculating profits. But behind those ordinary eyes could rest the wisdom that guides an entire city. That baker kneading dough might spend their evenings not resting weary arms, but deliberating matters of war and peace. The captain of the guard walking past, nodding at familiar faces, might later don a magical helm and cast votes that shape the destiny of thousands. This is the profound truth of Waterdeep's Masked Lords. They are not distant aristocrats isolated in towers of privilege, but people who walk among you, who understand your struggles because they share them, who govern wisely because they never forget what ordinary life demands. The founding vision of Ahghairon insisted that the Masked Lords must represent every layer of Waterdeep's complex society. He understood that a council composed only of nobles would inevitably favor aristocratic interests, creating laws that protected inherited privilege while ignoring the needs of common citizens. Similarly, a council dominated by guild masters would twist regulations to benefit merchants and craftsmen at the expense of laborers and consumers. A council of only common folk might lack the education, connections, and strategic perspective necessary to navigate international diplomacy and high politics. The solution was balance, carefully maintained across generations, ensuring that every significant group within Waterdeep had voices speaking for their interests within the council chamber. The noble families of Waterdeep, those ancient houses whose names echo through centuries of history, naturally provide several masked lords at any given time. These nobles bring invaluable assets to the council. They understand the intricate web of alliances, marriages, and feuds that connect powerful families across Faerûn. They possess education in history, philosophy, and law that enables sophisticated policy analysis. They maintain networks of contacts in other cities, other kingdoms, even other planes of existence. When Waterdeep must negotiate with Baldur's Gate, when diplomatic tensions rise with Luskan, when trade agreements require careful wording to satisfy multiple parties, the nobles on the council provide expertise that others might lack. They know how to read between the lines of formal correspondence, how to interpret subtle signals in diplomatic protocol, and how to craft agreements that serve Waterdeep's interests while maintaining cordial relations with neighbors. But these noble lords also bring potential dangers. Their loyalty to family runs deep, and family interests do not always align with the city's welfare. A noble might be tempted to vote for policies that increase their house's wealth or status. They might seek favorable appointments for relatives, lucrative contracts for family businesses, or legal advantages over rival houses. The genius of the masked system is that it neutralizes these temptations. When a noble dons the helm, they cannot coordinate with other noble lords because they do not know who those lords are. They cannot form a voting bloc to advance aristocratic interests, and they know that their fellow lords might include commoners who will vigorously oppose any attempt to privilege nobility over other classes. The Helm transforms them from representatives of their house into representatives of all Waterdeep. The guilds, those powerful organizations that control much of Waterdeep's commerce and craft production, also maintain representation on the council. Guild masters, successful merchants, and prominent traders bring deep understanding of economic realities that nobles might miss. They know which trade routes generate the most revenue, which industries employ the most workers, which regulations help or hinder business growth. When the council debates tax policy, import duties, or trade agreements, the guild representatives provide crucial insights. They explain how proposed changes would affect prices, employment, and economic stability. They warn against policies that might sound good in theory, but would prove disastrous in practice. Their expertise helps Waterdeep maintain the thriving economy that makes it the commercial heart of the Sword Coast. Yet guild interests, like noble interests, do not always serve the common good. Guild masters might favor regulations that protect established businesses from competition, even when such protection raises prices for consumers. They might seek to weaken worker protections to reduce labor costs. They might push for trade policies that benefit their particular guild while harming other industries. Again, the masked system provides balance. A guild master cannot identify other guild representatives to form a merchant voting bloc. They must argue for their positions based on merit, convincing lords from other backgrounds that the proposed policy serves Waterdeep broadly rather than one narrow interest. And they face opposition from lords who understand commerce from the perspective of workers, consumers, and small entrepreneurs rather than established guild powers. The common folk of Waterdeep, those who labor on the docks, guard the walls, clean the streets, build the structures, and perform the 1,000 unglamorous tasks that keep a great city functioning, must also have voices in the council chamber. These lords bring perspectives that nobles and guild masters often overlook. They know what life costs for ordinary families. They understand which neighborhoods lack adequate services, which streets need repair, which guard posts remain chronically understaffed. They recognize when policies that look reasonable on parchment create unbearable burdens for those living at the margins. When the council debates taxes, they explain how increased levies might force families to choose between food and rent. When discussions turn to city services, they identify which improvements would most benefit the greatest number of citizens. Their presence ensures that governance considers not just the wealthy and powerful, but everyone who calls Waterdeep home. Finding suitable candidates from among common citizens presents unique challenges. Unlike nobles and guild masters, who receive education and develop leadership skills as part of their social position, common folk often lack formal training in law, economics, or governance. The open lord must identify individuals who demonstrate natural wisdom, sharp judgment, and dedication to justice despite lacking aristocratic polish. These might be elderly workers whose decades of experience have taught them profound truths about human nature and social dynamics. They might be former soldiers who learned strategy and leadership in military service. They might be tavern keepers who hear the genuine concerns of ordinary people every day. They might be craftspeople whose work requires careful attention to detail and long-term planning. What matters is not formal credentials, but practical wisdom and genuine commitment to Waterdeep's welfare. The selection process itself reflects the council's commitment to diverse representation. When a vacancy occurs, based on what we understand from the system's design, the existing masked lords would debate in closed session, suggesting potential candidates who might fill the empty seat. They would consider what perspective the council currently lacks. If several nobles have recently joined, they might seek a common citizen to restore balance. If guild representation has grown too strong, they might look for someone outside the merchant class. If the council includes too many humans, they might seek an elf, dwarf, halfling, or member of another race that calls Waterdeep home. The goal is always to maintain the rich diversity that makes the council effective. Once the lords agree on a short list of candidates, they vote in secret to determine which individual should receive an invitation. This voting happens before the candidate knows they are being considered, preventing any attempt to campaign or curry favor. The person going about their daily business has no idea that anonymous rulers are debating their fitness for high office. Only after the lords reach consensus does the open lord approach the chosen candidate, usually arranging a private meeting under some innocuous pretext. The invitation comes as a complete surprise, often a shocking one. Imagine being a dock worker, expecting to discuss some routine matter with the open lord, only to be asked if you would join the secret council that rules the greatest city in Faerûn. The candidate faces an extraordinary choice. Accepting means taking on immense responsibility without receiving any public recognition. It means lying to friends and family about your whereabouts when council meetings occur. It means maintaining your regular occupation while adding the burden of governance. It means potentially becoming a target for those who would threaten or bribe a masked lord if they could identify one. And it means sacrificing personal ambition, for you can never reveal your role, never claim credit for wise decisions, never use your position for personal advantage. Many candidates presented with these realities decline the invitation. They recognize that the sacrifice exceeds what they can reasonably offer. But those who accept, who agree to serve in shadow, demonstrate the highest civic virtue. They become masked lords, and Waterdeep benefits immeasurably from their willingness to serve without glory. The diversity of the masked lords creates fascinating dynamics within the council chamber. When debates begin, you can imagine the scene. Identical figures in black robes, indistinguishable from one another, their voices altered by the helms to sound the same. One might speak with the polished rhetoric of noble education, advocating for a diplomatic approach to a problem. Another could respond with the blunt practicality of someone who has worked with their hands, suggesting a simpler solution. A third might offer economic analysis based on years of managing a business. A fourth could bring moral and philosophical considerations drawn from religious study. A fifth might speak from personal experience of poverty, explaining how the proposed policy would affect those with the least. Each perspective is valuable. Each contributes to a fuller understanding of the issue. And because the Helms hide their identities, each must be taken seriously rather than dismissed based on the speaker's social status. This diversity also protects against corruption and outside manipulation. Throughout Waterdeep's history, powerful interests have attempted to influence the Masked Lords through bribes, threats, or blackmail. Foreign powers have tried to plant spies on the Council. Criminal organizations have sought to suborn lords to their purposes. Rival cities have attempted to manipulate Waterdeep's governance for their own advantage. All these efforts have failed because the system's design makes corruption nearly impossible. You cannot bribe a lord whose identity you do not know. You cannot threaten someone you cannot identify. You cannot blackmail a person whose mask prevents you from discovering their secrets. The anonymity that seems like a weakness is actually the system's greatest strength. Moreover, the diversity of the Council means that even if one lord were somehow corrupted, they could not sway policy alone. A noble who secretly agreed to favor a foreign power's interests would still need to convince other lords to support the policy. They would need to present arguments that persuaded commoners, guild members, and other nobles that the proposed course served Waterdeep. If their arguments were weak or suspicious, the other lords would reject them regardless of who was making them. The system requires consensus building, genuine persuasion, and policies that can withstand scrutiny from multiple perspectives. This built-in resistance to corruption has preserved Waterdeep's integrity through centuries when other cities fell to internal rot. The individual lords, when they remove their helms and return to their normal lives, carry the weight of their secret knowledge alone. We can imagine a noble attending a social gathering where other nobles complain about council decisions, and they must remain silent. Unable to defend policies they personally advocated or explain the reasoning behind unpopular choices. A guild master might hear merchants criticizing trade regulations, and they cannot reveal that they argued against those very regulations in council, but were outvoted. A common laborer might listen to coworkers speculating about the Masked Lords' identities and motivations, and they must participate in the speculation as though they knew nothing. This isolation, this inability to share the burden with anyone, represents one of the greatest sacrifices Masked Lords make. They serve without recognition, without support, and often without anyone understanding the pressures they face. Yet despite these challenges, individuals continue accepting invitations to join the council. They do so because they love Waterdeep, because they believe in the system, and because they recognize that the city's prosperity depends on wise governance. They understand that Waterdeep's success, its position as the jewel of the Sword Coast, stems directly from having rulers who represent all its people rather than narrow interests. And they take pride, quiet and private though it must remain, in contributing to something greater than themselves. When you walk Waterdeep streets, and see its magnificence, when you observe the peaceful coexistence of diverse peoples, when you benefit from fair laws and just governance, you are witnessing the results of anonymous service by individuals who chose duty over glory. The Masked Lords are guardians from every walk of life, and their varied perspectives create the balanced wisdom that keeps Waterdeep thriving. Section 4. Trials through the centuries. The greatest test of any system comes not in times of prosperity, but in moments of crisis, when foundations shake and the temptation to abandon principle grows overwhelming. The Masked Lords of Waterdeep have faced such tests repeatedly across the centuries. Their system challenged by wars, conspiracies, betrayals, and disasters that would have toppled lesser governments. You might wonder how anonymous rulers could maintain authority when crisis demanded visible leadership, how secret deliberations could respond quickly to urgent threats, how masked identities could survive determined efforts to expose them. The answer lies in the strength of the system itself, designed by Ahghairon with such wisdom that it could endure even the most devastating storms. Even during Ahghairon's lifetime, when the system was still young and his guiding presence offered stability, threats emerged that tested the Masked Lord's vigilance. In the year 1250, by Dale Reckoning, mind flayers, those horrific creatures who feed on sentient brains and enslave entire populations, prepared to conquer Waterdeep. The Illithids had been working in secret for years, establishing a colony beneath the city, breeding thralls, and preparing for the moment when they would overwhelm the surface dwellers and establish Waterdeep as a feeding ground for their elder brain. The plan was sophisticated and might have succeeded, for mind flayers excel at mental domination and subtle manipulation. But the Illithids had not counted on the intervention of Githyanki, those fierce warriors who have dedicated their entire civilization to hunting and destroying mind flayers wherever they exist. The Githyanki struck without warning, invading the Underdark colony and killing the elder brain that coordinated the Illithid hive. The mind flayers' carefully constructed plans collapsed in hours of brutal combat deep beneath the city streets. Most citizens of Waterdeep never knew how close they had come to enslavement, never realized that an alien intelligence had been preparing to reduce them to mindless thralls. The Masked Lords, however, understood. This incident reinforced an important lesson that would guide their thinking for centuries to come. Waterdeep faced threats that went far beyond political intrigue and economic competition. The Lords needed to remain vigilant against dangers from the Underdark, from other planes, from creatures whose very nature defied normal human understanding. 6 years later, in 1256, by Dale Reckoning, the greatest crisis arrived. Ahghairon himself died. The ancient wizard who had guided Waterdeep for over 2 centuries, who had created the Masked Lords and served as their public face, who had maintained order through sheer force of wisdom and magical power, was gone. His death sent shockwaves through the city. The man who had slain the warlord Rawler who had refused a crown to establish a more just system, who had made Waterdeep into a beacon of civilization, had finally succumbed to mortality. Many feared that Waterdeep would descend into chaos, that without Ahghairon's guiding hand, the city would tear itself apart. And for a time, those fears seemed justified. In the aftermath of Ahghairon's death, sources tell us that Waterdeep experienced significant turmoil. Kelban Aronson, known as Kelban the Elder or Kelban the Blackstaff, one of the most powerful wizards in the city and someone who might have been expected to step forward in this moment of crisis, was notably absent from prominent public leadership during this period, whether he had withdrawn deliberately to allow the system to prove itself without relying on another archmage's intervention, or whether other circumstances kept him from immediately filling the void Ahghairon left, remains a matter that the historical record does not fully clarify. What is clear is that this absence of another towering magical authority to immediately succeed Ahghairon compounded the leadership crisis. The Masked Lords convened in emergency session, debating how to proceed, but without Ahghairon's towering presence, without his ability to command respect through reputation alone, their authority seemed diminished to outside observers. The merchant guilds of Waterdeep, those powerful organizations that controlled much of the city's commerce, sensed weakness and opportunity. If there was ever a moment to seize control, to replace the mysterious Masked Lords with guild leadership that would favor merchant interests, this was it. What followed became known as the Guildmasters' War, or simply the Guild Wars, a period of turmoil and political conflict that tested whether the masked system could survive without its creator. Historical accounts indicate that this conflict lasted for years, though the exact chronology and details remain somewhat unclear in surviving records, perhaps deliberately obscured by the lords themselves to protect their system. The guilds did not take up arms in traditional warfare, for Waterdeep's strength made outright rebellion foolish. Instead, they engaged in political scheming, economic manipulation, and what we can infer from the period's reputation was likely subtle violence. Guild masters attempted to bribe city officials, hoping to learn the identities of masked lords and then pressure or blackmail them. They funded private armies disguised as merchant guards, creating military forces loyal to individual guilds rather than the city. They manipulated prices and supplies, demonstrating their economic power and suggesting that the guilds, not the lords, truly controlled Waterdeep's prosperity. The guilds fought each other as vigorously as they challenged the lords, each trying to position itself as the dominant power that would emerge from the chaos. Through all this turmoil, the masked lords endured. They could not reveal themselves to demonstrate their authority, for doing so would destroy the very system they sought to preserve. They could not strike back openly against the guilds without provoking open rebellion. Instead, based on how the conflict ultimately resolved, they must have worked quietly and patiently, using the advantages their anonymity provided. Because no one knew which guild masters might actually be masked lords, the guilds could not coordinate effectively. A meeting to plot against the lords might have included a lord sitting among the conspirators, listening to every plan. An assassination scheme might have been reported to the council by the very guild master being approached to fund it. The lords likely played the guilds against each other, leaking information that fueled inter-guild rivalries, ensuring that merchant organizations spent as much energy fighting amongst themselves as challenging the council. Gradually, over years of careful maneuvering, the masked lords reasserted control. They appointed a new open lord who could serve as the public face of authority. They implemented regulations that broke the guild's monopolistic power while still allowing commerce to flourish. They demonstrated through consistent governance that the system Ahghairon created could function without him, that the city needed wise, anonymous rulers more than it needed visible guild masters seeking personal profit. By the time the guild wars ended, Waterdeep had been transformed. The guilds remained powerful economic forces, but they understood that political power belonged to the lords. Many guild masters, chastened by the experience, came to appreciate the masked system, recognizing that it protected them from each other as much as it limited their ambitions. Other threats emerged throughout the centuries, testing the lords in different ways. The relationship between the masked lords and various criminal organizations provided ongoing challenges. The Shadow Thieves, a powerful guild of criminals based in attempted multiple times to establish operations in Waterdeep. Seeing the wealthy city as ideal territory for their activities, the lords responded with what historical accounts describe as ruthless efficiency, using the city watch and hired adventurers to hunt down shadow thief agents and drive them from Waterdeep. This campaign succeeded largely because the shadow thieves could not identify which prominent citizens were masked lords, and therefore could not target the decision makers directly. Every attempted bribery might reach a lord's ears. Every assassination plot might be reported to the council. The anonymity that made the lords seem vulnerable actually made them nearly impossible to attack effectively. The Cult of the Dragon, that apocalyptic organization dedicated to transforming dragons into undead dracoliches, also threatened Waterdeep repeatedly across the centuries. The cult saw the city as both a source of wealth to fund their operations and a source of potential recruits among power-hungry nobles and merchants. In one particularly bold attack, historical records confirm that the cult assassinated masked Lord Arthagast Ulbrinter. The exact circumstances of this assassination and when it occurred remain somewhat obscure, but the killing demonstrated that masked lords were not invulnerable, that determined enemies could sometimes identify and eliminate individual members. Yet it also showed the system's resilience. The loss of one lord, tragic though it was, did not cripple the council. The remaining lords continued their work, selected a replacement for Ulbrinter and intensified their efforts against the cult of the dragon until the threat was contained. Throughout these centuries, various individuals served as open lord, each bringing their own style to the position while maintaining the essential functions Ahghairon had established. Some open lords were warriors, defending Waterdeep through military prowess. Others were diplomats, navigating the complex political relationships with other cities and kingdoms. Several were powerful wizards, wielding magic to protect the city from supernatural threats. Each adapted the role to their strengths while preserving the relationship between the open lord and the masked council. The position's stability, its clear lines of succession, provided continuity even as individual open lords came and went. The most controversial open lord in recent memory was Dagult Neverember, a nobleman who assumed the position in the year 1479 by Dale Reckoning. Neverember brought tremendous energy and ambition to the role. He instituted reforms aimed at increasing Waterdeep's prosperity and extending its influence. He personally invested his fortune in rebuilding the city of Neverwinter, which had been devastated by a volcanic eruption, claiming the title of Lord Protector of Neverwinter, while simultaneously serving as Open Lord of Waterdeep. His dual role raised questions about divided loyalties, but initially, Waterdeep thrived under his leadership. Trade increased. The city's defenses strengthened. Infrastructure improved, however. Neverember's rule gradually revealed troubling aspects. He implemented a controversial tax policy, requiring every resident over 10 years old to pay 1 shard each month. Collecting these funds, supposedly for dragon defense and other civic needs, but investigations would later reveal that Neverember had been embezzling substantial portions of this revenue, secretly siphoning off hundreds of thousands of gold dragons and hiding them in a vault beneath the city. He grew increasingly autocratic in Neverwinter, with rumors spreading that he sought to eliminate the legitimate Ahghairon bloodline to solidify his own claim to leadership. His attention split between 2 cities. He became less responsive to Waterdeep's needs and more focused on his personal ambitions. The Masked Lords observed these developments with growing concern. They must have debated in council whether Neverember's effective governance outweighed his ethical compromises, whether his embezzlement constituted sufficient grounds for removal, and whether Waterdeep would benefit from replacing him or suffer from the disruption. The decision came in 1489 by Dale Reckoning, when Neverember was away in Neverwinter, focused on rebuilding efforts there. The Masked Lords voted to remove him from office, exercising their authority to override even the Open Lord when his actions no longer served the city's interests. It was a dramatic demonstration of the system's checks and balances, proof that no single individual, no matter how powerful or accomplished, could subvert the collective will of the council. Lady Laeral Silverhand assumed the position of Open Lord following Neverember's removal. Laeral brought unparalleled credentials to the role. She was one of the legendary Seven Sisters, daughters of the goddess Mystra, individuals of extraordinary magical power and centuries of experience. She had served Waterdeep in various capacities throughout its history, understanding the city intimately. Her return marked a new era, one focused on restoring integrity to governance and rebuilding trust between the lords and the citizens they served. But Laeral immediately faced her own crisis. In 1491, by Dale reckoning, a series of assassinations struck the Masked Lords themselves. Multiple lords were murdered in what became known as the Death Masks Conspiracy. Rumors spread that Neverember, bitter about his removal from power, had orchestrated the killings as revenge against those who voted him out. Laeral investigated thoroughly and determined that Neverember, whatever his other faults, was not responsible for these particular murders. The true perpetrators and their motives remained murky, lost in the shadows of Waterdeep's criminal underworld. The assassinations succeeded in killing several lords, reducing the council's numbers and creating fear among the survivors. Yet, once again, the system endured. The remaining Masked Lords continued meeting, taking enhanced security precautions, but refusing to abandon their responsibilities. They selected new members to fill the vacant seats, carefully vetting candidates to ensure no infiltrators joined the council. They increased cooperation with organizations like the Harpers and various adventuring companies, recognizing that the lords alone could not defend against every threat. The Death Masks Conspiracy, rather than destroying the Masked Lords, ultimately strengthened them by forcing improvements to security protocols and demonstrating that the institution transcended any individual members. These trials, spanning from the Mind Flayer threat through Ahghairon's death and the Guild Wars, from criminal infiltration, attempts to cult assassinations, from corrupt open lords to the Death Masks Conspiracy, proved that the masked system possessed remarkable resilience. Each crisis tested different aspects of the structure. The Guild Wars tested whether anonymous rulers could maintain authority without their creator. The Illithid plot tested their vigilance against hidden dangers. The Cult of the Dragon tested their ability to withstand direct attacks on individual members. Neverember's embezzlement tested whether the system included effective checks on executive power. The Death Masks Conspiracy tested the Lord's courage and willingness to continue serving despite personal danger. In every case, the Masked Lords adapted, learned, and emerged stronger. They refined their security measures after each breach. They expanded their intelligence networks following each surprise threat. They clarified their procedures and protocols after each institutional challenge. The system that Ahghairon designed was not static, but evolutionary, capable of incorporating lessons from experience without abandoning core principles. The anonymity remained absolute. The diversity of representation continued. The balance between the open lord and the council persisted, but the specific mechanisms for selecting lords, protecting their identities, and responding to crises evolved with changing circumstances. You walk through modern Waterdeep, centuries after these trials, benefiting from the wisdom gained through hard experience. The masked lords who govern today stand on foundations tested by fire, refined by conflict, and proven through survival. They are the inheritors of a system that has weathered every storm Faerûn could conjure, and their continued vigilance ensures that future challenges will be met with the same resilience that characterized their predecessors. Section 5. The Modern Council and Contemporary Challenges. You stand in Waterdeep today, in the closing years of the 15th century by Dale reckoning, and the city gleams with prosperity that would astound visitors from earlier ages. The harbor teems with vessels from every corner of Faerûn and beyond. The streets bustle with merchants hawking goods from distant lands. The towers of Castle Waterdeep pierce the sky, symbols of enduring power and stability. Yet beneath this glittering surface, currents of tension flow through the city, challenges both old and new that test the wisdom of the masked lords who rule from shadow. The modern council faces threats their predecessors never imagined alongside familiar dangers that have plagued Waterdeep for centuries. And how they navigate these challenges will determine whether the system Ahghairon created can survive into its second millennium. Lady Laeral Silverhand presides over this complex landscape as Open Lord, bringing to the position credentials that few in history could match. She is one of the 7 sisters, daughters of the goddess Mystra herself, individuals touched by divine power and blessed with centuries of life and magical prowess beyond mortal comprehension. Laeral has walked Faerûn for over 700 years, witnessing the rise and fall of kingdoms, the birth and death of religions, and transformations in magic itself. She knew Waterdeep when it was young, advised some of its earliest rulers, and watched the city grow from a frontier settlement into the greatest metropolis on the Sword Coast. Her return to active leadership, following the removal of Dagult Neverember, brought hope to many citizens who remembered her wisdom and dedication from earlier eras. But Laeral inherited a city scarred by Neverember's corruption and divided by the revelations of his embezzlement, the discovery that the Open Lord had been stealing from Waterdeep's treasury, siphoning off funds meant for dragon defense and civic improvements to finance his personal ambitions in Neverwinter, shook public confidence in the very office she now occupies. Citizens who once trusted their rulers implicitly now wonder who else might be corrupt, which other officials might be enriching themselves at public expense, whether the masked lords themselves harbor secret schemes. Laeral must rebuild this trust while simultaneously addressing the practical problems Neverember's theft created. For the missing gold represents resources Waterdeep desperately needs. The modern council itself has evolved to meet the needs of a city that has grown exponentially since Ahghairon's time. While historical tradition often cited 16 lords as a typical number, the exact composition of the current council reflects adjustments made over the years based on Waterdeep's changing circumstances. These lords represent the familiar diversity Ahghairon envisioned, drawing from nobles, guild masters, common citizens, and others whose wisdom recommends them for service. The expansion of the council over the centuries creates new dynamics. More lords mean more perspectives, which enriches debate, but can also complicate consensus building. More lords mean more potential security breaches, more individuals whose identities must remain hidden, and more opportunities for the wrong person to infiltrate the council. The composition of the modern council likely reflects both continuity and change. Several lords may remain from Neverember's era, individuals who served during his tenure and participated in the decision to remove him from office. These lords would bring institutional memory and experience, but also face questions about why they tolerated his corruption for so long, whether they profited from his schemes, and whether loyalists to Neverember still sit among the Masked Lords, pursuing his interests even after his removal. Other lords are presumably recent additions, selected by Laeral to fill vacancies created by the Death Mask's assassinations, and to bring fresh perspectives to the council. These newer lords would offer energy and novel approaches, but lack the deep experience that guides seasoned counselors through complex situations. Among the modern lords, certain patterns might emerge from careful observation of council actions, though their identities remain as hidden as ever. Several lords clearly possess deep knowledge of maritime trade and harbor operations, suggesting backgrounds as ship captains, dock masters, or merchant princes, whose fortunes depend on Waterdeep's dominance of sea lanes. Other lords demonstrate expertise in arcane matters, proposing policies that account for magical complications, and speaking with authority about supernatural threats. Still others show intimate familiarity with the concerns of laborers and craftspeople, advocating forcefully for worker protections and fair wages. The diversity persists, maintaining Ahghairon's vision even as individual lords change. Yet this diversity also highlights one of the system's ongoing tensions. The guild masters and nobles, who comprise significant portions of the council, bring with them entrenched interests that do not always align with the common good. The guilds, those powerful organizations controlling Waterdeep's commerce and craft production, have always sought advantages for their members, even when such advantages harm consumers or non-guild workers. Modern guilds are no different. They push for regulations that restrict competition, making it nearly impossible for anyone to conduct business in Waterdeep without joining a guild and paying substantial dues. They lobby for tax policies that shift burdens onto non-merchant citizens. They resist reforms that would empower workers or protect consumers. When guild masters serve as masked lords, These perspectives would naturally enter council deliberations, creating conflicts between what serves guild interests and what serves Waterdeep broadly. The nobility presents similar challenges. Waterdeep's noble families, those ancient houses whose lineages stretch back centuries, enjoy privileges that ordinary citizens cannot access, while the laws are not explicitly biased in their favor. Nobles possess resources to make minor infractions disappear, connections to ensure favorable treatment, and knowledge of legal loopholes unavailable to common folk. When nobles serve as masked lords, they would naturally defend these advantages, arguing that the nobility provides stability, tradition, and leadership that justifies special consideration. Other lords, particularly those from common backgrounds, would likely resist such arguments, insisting that true justice means equal treatment regardless of birth or wealth. These debates could grow heated, with fundamental disagreements about fairness, tradition, and the proper structure of society underlying apparently simple policy questions. The economic disparities within Waterdeep create fertile ground for unrest and challenge the Masked Lord's ability to maintain order. Walk through the Castle Ward or Sea Ward, those districts where nobility and wealthy merchants reside, and you see magnificent estates, private gardens, and every luxury civilization can provide. Then walk through the Dock Ward, where laborers and the poor cluster in cramped tenements, where sanitation barely functions, where crime flourishes in shadows the watch rarely patrols. The contrast is stark, undeniable, and increasingly intolerable to those suffering at the bottom of Waterdeep's hierarchy. Whispers might circulate about revolution, about peasant uprisings to overthrow the masked lords and establish governance that serves ordinary citizens rather than protecting privilege. Some activists could be calling for transparency, demanding that the lords reveal their identities so the people can judge whether their rulers truly represent them or merely pretend to while serving elite interests. These calls for revolution present the masked lords with a profound dilemma. They cannot address grievances by revealing themselves, for transparency would destroy the system that has served Waterdeep for centuries. But they cannot simply ignore legitimate complaints about inequality, for unaddressed injustice eventually explodes into violence. The lords must find ways to demonstrate that they understand and care about conditions in the Dock Ward, that policies do consider the welfare of the poor, that governance aims at lifting all citizens rather than simply maintaining the status quo. This requires Laeral to serve as a particularly effective spokesperson, explaining decisions, taking concerns to the council, and convincing skeptical citizens that their anonymous rulers deserve continued trust despite recent betrayals. The guild wars, those conflicts between merchant organizations that nearly tore Waterdeep apart after Ahghairon's death, have not disappeared, but merely evolved into less openly violent forms. Modern guilds still feud with each other, competing for market dominance, poaching each other's members, and engaging in economic warfare that sometimes turns physical. The lords must mediate these conflicts constantly, balancing the need to let competition flourish against the danger of letting rivalries escalate into street battles. When one guild grows too powerful, threatening to monopolize an entire industry, the lords would need to intervene to break up that concentration of economic power. When guild disputes threaten public order, the lords would impose settlements that neither side finds fully satisfactory, but both can accept. It is exhausting, detail-oriented work that never ends, for as soon as one conflict resolves, 3 more emerge. Modern threats also arrive from beyond Waterdeep's walls, testing the Lord's ability to protect the city against external dangers. The cult of the dragon, though diminished by repeated defeats, remains active and continues viewing Waterdeep as both target and treasure trove. Other organizations, from the Gentarim to various thieves' guilds, constantly probe for weaknesses they might exploit. Foreign powers, jealous of Waterdeep's prosperity and concerned about its influence, plot to undermine the city through espionage, economic manipulation, or outright aggression. The lords must maintain constant vigilance, working with allies like the Harpers, coordinating with mercenary companies and adventuring groups, and funding intelligence operations to identify threats before they materialize. The Masked Lords also confront challenges unique to their era. The Spell Plague, that catastrophic magical disaster that reshaped reality itself decades ago, left scars throughout Faerûn that still require navigation. Magic itself became unreliable for a time, traditional spells failing or producing unexpected results, creating chaos that rulers struggled to contain. Though stability has largely returned, lingering effects persist, and the lords must consider magical complications that earlier councils never faced. The return of various deities, changes to the pantheon, and shifts in divine power create religious tensions requiring careful management. New races have arrived in Waterdeep, refugees from changed or destroyed homelands seeking sanctuary, and integrating these newcomers while maintaining social cohesion demands wisdom and patience. Perhaps most significantly, the Masked Lords face questions about the system's continued relevance in a changing world. Critics argue that anonymous governance made sense in Ahghairon's time, but serves no purpose in the modern era beyond protecting corrupt officials from accountability. They point to other successful cities that function without masked rulers, suggesting that Waterdeep clings to tradition long past its usefulness. They demand democratic reforms, elections that would allow citizens to choose their leaders openly rather than submitting to the rule of unknown individuals. These arguments gain traction among younger citizens who have no memory of why the system was created, who see only the mystery and secrecy without understanding the wisdom behind them. The lords respond to these criticisms not through public debate. for they cannot defend themselves openly without revealing their identities, but through effective governance that demonstrates the system's value. They point to Waterdeep's prosperity, noting that the city has thrived under masked rule for centuries, while other cities suffered under transparent but corrupt or incompetent governments. They highlight the system's resistance to manipulation by powerful interests, explaining that anonymity prevents the bribery and intimidation that plague other places. They emphasize the diversity of representation, arguing that the council includes voices from every level of society rather than just those wealthy enough to fund political campaigns. Through Laeral and through their actions, they make the case that what matters is not who rules, but how well they rule. That results matter more than visibility. Yet the lords also recognize that some reforms might strengthen rather than weaken the system. They have enhanced transparency in certain areas, publishing more detailed reports of council decisions and the reasoning behind them, even while keeping the actual deliberations secret. They have created more opportunities for citizen input, establishing formal petition processes and holding regular sessions where Laeral hears grievances and brings them to the council's attention. They have increased accountability mechanisms, making it easier to remove lords who abuse their positions while still protecting those who serve faithfully. These adaptations demonstrate that the masked system need not be rigid, that it can evolve with changing times while preserving its essential character. The modern masked lords also leverage advantages their predecessors lacked. Better communication magic allows them to coordinate more effectively, sharing information and calling emergency sessions without the delays that once hampered rapid response. Improved divination defenses protect not only the helms, but also the locations where lords meet and the channels through which they communicate. Stronger alliances with organizations like the Harpers provide intelligence and support that enhances the council's capabilities and the accumulated wisdom of centuries. Lessons learned from every crisis and challenge Waterdeep has faced guides their decisions with historical perspective that newer cities cannot match. As you walk through Waterdeep in these modern times, you witness a city at a crossroads. The system that has governed for so long faces questions about its future, even as it demonstrates continued effectiveness. The masked lords who rule from shadow must prove their worth to a new generation, while addressing challenges their founders never anticipated. And Laeral Silverhand, standing in the light as their representative, must bridge the gap between anonymous wisdom and public accountability, showing that secret rulers can still serve openly, and that the masks hide not corruption, but dedication. The contemporary challenges are real and significant, but so is the resilience of a system tested by centuries and refined by experience into something uniquely capable of guiding Waterdeep through whatever trials the future brings. Section 6. The enduring legacy of Waterdeep's secret rulers. Step back for a moment and consider what you have learned. For more than 4 centuries, since 1032 by Dale reckoning, Waterdeep has been governed by rulers whose faces remain hidden, whose names stay secret, and whose identities are known to almost no one. This system, which would seem vulnerable and unstable on its surface, has proven to be one of the most successful governance structures in all of Faerûn. While kingdoms have risen and fallen, while tyrants have seized power only to be overthrown, while democracies have descended into mob rule, and aristocracies have rotted from within, Waterdeep has endured. The city has grown from a settlement threatened by warlords and monsters into the greatest metropolis on the Sword Coast, a beacon of civilization that attracts the ambitious, the talented, and the hopeful from every corner of the world. This success is not accidental. It flows directly from the wisdom embedded in the Masked system, from principles that Ahghairon understood and that each generation of lords has preserved. The fundamental genius of the Masked Lords lies in separating personal ambition from public service. In most cities, those who seek power do so for the glory, the wealth, the status, and the ability to shape society according to their personal vision. Leadership becomes a prize to be won, and the competition for that prize consumes enormous energy that might otherwise be directed toward actual governance. Candidates for office make promises they cannot keep, form alliances based on mutual benefit rather than shared principles, and compromise their integrity in pursuit of victory. Once in power, they focus on maintaining that power, on rewarding allies and punishing enemies, on building legacies that will outlast their tenure. The actual work of governance, the tedious business of making wise decisions about taxation and infrastructure and justice, becomes secondary to political survival. Waterdeep's system eliminates these corrupting dynamics by removing the rewards that typically motivate power-seeking behavior. A masked lord receives no public acclaim, no statue in their honor, no place in visible history. They cannot use their position to enrich themselves, because doing so would require revealing their identity to those they sought to benefit. They cannot build political machines or dynasties because their families do not know they serve on the council. They cannot leverage their office to advance personal agendas because other lords, whose identities they do not know, will oppose them if those agendas conflict with the common good. What remains, once all these typical motivations are stripped away, is pure service. Those who accept the invitation to become masked lords do so knowing they will sacrifice time, energy, and peace of mind while gaining nothing tangible in return. They serve because they love Waterdeep, because they believe in wise governance, and because they recognize that some responsibilities transcend personal interest. This selfless dedication produces better decisions than systems driven by ambition and self-interest. When lords debate policy in council, they do so without worrying about how their positions will affect their re-election prospects, their family's reputation, or their business interests. They can advocate for unpopular but necessary measures without fearing public backlash. They can oppose powerful interests without worrying about retaliation. They can change their minds when presented with compelling arguments without appearing weak or inconsistent. The masked deliberations create a space for genuine intellectual honesty, where the goal is finding the best solution rather than winning a debate or maintaining a political position. This quality of decision-making shows in Waterdeep's laws, which tend to be carefully crafted, thoroughly considered, and effective at achieving their stated purposes. The diversity of representation, that careful balance Ahghairon built into the system, ensures that decisions account for impacts across all segments of society. In cities governed by single rulers or narrow elites, policies inevitably favor those in power, while harming or ignoring those outside the ruling circle. A king makes decisions that benefit the crown and nobility. A merchant council creates laws that advantage traders while exploiting workers and consumers. A democratic majority imposes its will on minorities. But Waterdeep's council includes nobles and commoners, merchants and laborers, humans and other races, each bringing perspectives that others might miss. When the lords debate a proposed tax, guild representatives would explain economic impacts. Noble members would consider diplomatic implications, and common citizens would describe effects on ordinary families. This comprehensive analysis produces policies that balance competing interests more effectively than any homogeneous governing body could achieve. The system's resistance to corruption and outside manipulation has proven crucial to Waterdeep's independence and integrity. Throughout history, powerful forces have sought to control the City of Splendors, recognizing that whoever commands Waterdeep's wealth and strategic position can influence events throughout the Sword Coast and beyond. Foreign kingdoms have tried infiltration and bribery. Criminal organizations have attempted blackmail and assassination. Rival cities have plotted to install puppet rulers who would serve their interests. All these efforts have failed because the masked system makes such manipulation nearly impossible. You cannot bribe rulers whose identities you do not know. You cannot blackmail officials you cannot identify. You cannot assassinate a council when you do not know which citizens are members. The anonymity that critics call a weakness is actually an impenetrable defense against the forces that have corrupted and destroyed other governments. Moreover, the system creates institutional stability that transcends individual personalities and lifespans. In kingdoms and democracies, leadership transitions often bring chaos. Succession crises erupt when monarchs die without clear heirs. Elections produce bitter divisions between winners and losers. Coups and revolutions overthrow entire governmental structures, but Waterdeep's transitions happen smoothly, almost invisibly. When a masked lord dies or retires, the council selects a replacement through established procedures. When an open lord steps down, their designated successor assumes the position without controversy. The city barely notices these changes because the system continues functioning regardless of which specific individuals occupy its offices. This stability allows for long-term planning and consistent policy implementation that would be impossible in governments subject to frequent upheaval. The philosophical foundation of masked governance rests on profound insights about human nature and political power. Ahghairon understood that visibility corrupts as surely as secrecy can. When rulers are constantly observed, when every action is scrutinized and every word analyzed, they begin performing rather than governing. They make decisions calculated to enhance their image rather than serve the public good. They avoid necessary but unpopular choices. They pander to influential constituencies. They become actors playing the role of leader rather than actual leaders making hard choices. The masks free the lords from this performance pressure, allowing them to focus on substance rather than appearance, on effectiveness rather than popularity. At the same time, Ahghairon recognized that complete secrecy breeds tyranny. Rulers who operate entirely in darkness, accountable to no one, inevitably abuse their power. The genius of the masked system is that it balances secrecy and transparency, anonymity and accountability. The lords' identities remain hidden, but their decisions are public. Citizens may not know who votes on each measure, but they know what policies are enacted and can judge those policies' effects. The open lord provides a visible face for governance, someone citizens can petition and question, and hold responsible for the council's actions. This balance preserves the benefits of anonymous deliberation while maintaining accountability to the people being governed. Other cities might learn valuable lessons from Waterdeep's success, though few would adopt the masked system in its entirety. The specific structure Ahghairon created works because it fits Waterdeep's particular circumstances. A large, diverse, wealthy city with complex governance needs and threats from multiple sources. Smaller communities might find simpler systems adequate. But the underlying principles, those insights about power and service and representation, apply far more broadly. Any government benefits from separating personal ambition from public duty. Any government improves when it includes diverse perspectives in decision-making. Any government strengthens when it resists corruption and outside manipulation. Cities studying Waterdeep should focus less on replicating the masks and more on understanding why the masks work, what problems they solve, and how those problems might be addressed through other means. The question of the Masked Lord's future grows increasingly urgent as Waterdeep enters a new era. The city faces challenges that would have been unimaginable to Ahghairon, magical catastrophes that reshape reality, religious upheavals that alter the divine pantheon, economic systems of unprecedented complexity, and social movements demanding transparency and democratic participation. Can a system created in the early 11th century by Dale reckoning meet the needs of the late 15th century and beyond? Should it be preserved unchanged? Or does wisdom require adaptation? These questions spark fierce debate among those who think seriously about Waterdeep's governance. The strongest argument for preserving the system is that it has worked extraordinarily well for centuries. Waterdeep's prosperity speaks for itself. The city's population approaches 2 million, making it one of the largest and most vibrant urban centers in all of Faerûn. Its economy thrives, with goods from across the world passing through its harbor. Its culture flourishes, producing art, music, literature, and scholarship that influence the entire continent. Its military strength deters aggression, while its diplomacy maintains peaceful relations with neighbors. Its laws, while imperfect, provide more justice to more people than the legal systems of most comparable cities. All of this success flows from decisions made by the Masked Lords. To abandon a system with such a proven track record simply because it seems outdated or because critics demand transparency would be foolish, sacrificing centuries of accumulated wisdom for untested alternatives. Furthermore, the threats that justified the masked system initially have not disappeared. Powerful interests still seek to manipulate Waterdeep's governance for their own purposes. Foreign powers still view the city as a prize worth infiltrating. Criminal organizations still probe for weaknesses to exploit. The pressures that would corrupt visible rulers, the bribes and threats and blackmail, remain as potent now as they were in Ahghairon's time. Perhaps they have grown even more sophisticated and dangerous as communication improves and magical capabilities expand. Removing the masks would expose the lords to precisely the forces the system was designed to resist, potentially undoing in years what has been built over centuries. Yet honest assessment must acknowledge the system's limitations and vulnerabilities. The masks create distance between rulers and citizens that can breed suspicion and resentment. When people cannot see their leaders' faces or know their names, when decisions come from anonymous councils meeting in secret, trust becomes difficult to maintain. Every unpopular policy, every perceived injustice, every failure of governance feeds speculation about corruption hidden behind the masks. The recent revelation of Daggalt Neverember's embezzlement damaged public confidence precisely because it confirmed suspicions that anonymous rule could shield wrongdoing. Rebuilding trust requires more than simply pointing to Waterdeep's success. It requires demonstrating continuously that the lords deserve the authority they wield, that they truly represent all citizens rather than narrow interests, and that the masks hide dedication rather than corruption. The system also struggles with representation as Waterdeep grows and diversifies. The council includes a number of lords that may have been adequate when the city was smaller and less complex. But questions naturally arise about whether this number can truly represent 2 million people of countless races, cultures, religions, and perspectives. The lords try to maintain diversity in their composition, but gaps inevitably exist. Some communities might feel their voices go unheard, their concerns ignored, their interests sacrificed to those of more powerful groups. Expanding the council might improve representation, but larger councils face coordination challenges and increased security risks. Finding the right balance between inclusivity and effectiveness requires ongoing attention and willingness to adapt. The future of the Masked Lords likely involves evolution rather than revolution. The core principles, those insights about power and service that make the system effective, should be preserved. The anonymity that protects lords from corruption and manipulation remains valuable and should not be abandoned lightly. The diversity of representation that produces balanced decisions should be maintained and possibly enhanced, but the specific mechanisms through which these principles operate can and should be refined. Enhanced transparency about decision-making processes, though not about the decision makers themselves, could reduce suspicion without compromising anonymity. Expanded opportunities for citizen input could improve representation without requiring council expansion. Stronger accountability mechanisms could reassure skeptics without exposing lords to the pressures the masks are meant to prevent. Technology and magic both offer tools that earlier generations lacked. Better communication allows the lords to coordinate more effectively and respond more quickly to crises. Improved divination defenses protect not only the helms, but also the infrastructure of secret governance. New magical innovations might enable even more sophisticated forms of anonymous rule, perhaps allowing citizens to verify that decisions are made by legitimate lords without revealing which specific individuals hold those positions. These advances could strengthen the system while addressing some of its traditional weaknesses, making masked governance more effective and more trusted without abandoning its fundamental character. As you stand in Waterdeep today, as you walk streets paved with prosperity, as you enjoy freedoms and opportunities that citizens of other cities can only dream of, you experience the tangible results of anonymous governance. The wealth surrounding you, the order, the justice, the culture, all flow from decisions made by people whose faces you will never see. The masked lords have governed wisely, not despite their anonymity, but because of it, freed from the corrupting influences that plague visible rulers. They have sacrificed recognition and glory, accepting only the burden of responsibility and the quiet satisfaction of service well performed. Their legacy is not measured in monuments or history books, but in the living, thriving city they have nurtured across the centuries. The masks will endure because Waterdeep needs them. The city's complexity, its wealth, its strategic importance, all create pressures that would overwhelm transparent governance. The forces seeking to manipulate and control Waterdeep have not diminished, and removing the masks would hand them easy victories. But more fundamentally, the masks will endure because they represent something profound about leadership and service. They remind everyone that governance is not about personal glory, but about collective welfare. Not about individual power, but about community strength. Not about rulers elevated above the people, but about servants working among them. This truth, which Ahghairon understood, and which each generation of lords has embodied, transcends any particular governmental structure. It is a truth worth preserving, worth defending, and worth passing to future generations who will face challenges we cannot yet imagine, but who will need the wisdom that masked governance provides. The secret rulers of Waterdeep walk among you still, hidden in plain sight, carrying the weight of their responsibility with quiet dignity. They might be anyone, they might be everyone, and that uncertainty, that mystery, that profound commitment to service without recognition is precisely what makes them worthy of the trust Waterdeep has placed in them for over 4 centuries. Behind the masks lie not tyrants or conspirators, but ordinary people doing extraordinary work, proving that the highest form of leadership is the kind no one sees, the kind that serves without seeking reward, the kind that builds something greater than any individual could achieve alone. If you found this deep dive into the secret rulers of Waterdeep fascinating, if these insights into masked governance and anonymous power enriched your understanding of the City of Splendors, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Your support helps create more content exploring the deepest mysteries and most intriguing secrets of the Forgotten Realms. Share your thoughts in the comments about whether you think the Masked Lords should continue ruling Waterdeep, or whether the time has come for transparency and reform. Until next time, may your adventures lead you to wisdom, and may you serve causes greater than yourself.